It is 2 in the morning. You are not sleeping. You already know that. You have been awake for an hour, maybe 2, lying in the dark with something pressing down on your chest that you do not have a name for. It might be grief. It might be guilt. It might be the particular loneliness that comes when the people who are supposed to understand you don't. So you pick up your phone, not to call your pastor, not to text a friend from church. You open an app, and a voice, calm, warm, available at 2 in the morning without any of the awkwardness of waking someone up, asks you, "What's on your heart tonight?" This is already happening, right now, in homes across America and the United Kingdom and South Korea and Brazil. People are having what feel like spiritual conversations with artificial intelligence. Some of them are finding comfort. Some of them are finding answers. And some of them are finding something that worries the most thoughtful people in the Christian world, including, as of last month, the man sitting in the chair of St. Peter himself. There is a question no seminary has ever prepared its graduates for, no ecumenical council has ever voted on, and no pope, until now, has ever had to answer publicly. We will get to what Pope Leo XIV said in June of this year. But first, you need to meet a priest who lasted less than 1 day. This is not a video about whether technology is good or evil. This is not an argument for or against artificial intelligence. This is not a debate for theologians in comfortable chairs. This is a question about you, about who you want speaking into the worst moments of your life, and whether it matters, whether it can possibly matter if that voice has never suffered. In July of 2024, a Catholic organization called Catholic Answers launched what they described as a pastoral AI tool. They gave it a name. They gave it a collar. They called it Father Justin. Father Justin could answer questions about Catholic theology. He could discuss the sacraments. He could talk about sin, about grace, about the nature of the church. And for a few hours, thousands of people interacted with him as though he were a real priest. Then someone asked him about confession, and the answers he gave were complicated. Some of what Father Justin said crossed lines that the church considers non-negotiable. Within 24 hours, Catholic Answers had shut him down. Father Justin was gone. The experiment had lasted less time than a single Sunday service. Now you might hear that story and think, well, that is just a programming error. Fix the guardrails, update the model, try again. And that is exactly what some people are saying. Here's what most people miss. The problem wasn't what Father Justin said. The problem was what Father Justin is. Because in Catholic theology, a priest is not a source of information. A priest is an ordained human being through whom specific sacramental acts are performed. You cannot confess your sins to a dataset. The absolution doesn't count, not because the church says so, but because the entire logic of the sacrament rests on the priest being a human being who stands before God on your behalf. Remove the human being, and you have not created a better priest. You have created something that has never existed before, and the church has no category for it. But stay with me, because not everyone who is thinking seriously about this question lands in the same place. There is a pastor in Florida named Christopher Bennett. He has a doctorate in theology. He has been ordained for decades. And since around 2014, he has been making an argument that makes other theologians deeply uncomfortable, that artificial intelligence might, one day, have a soul. Now before you close the tab, hear him out. Bennett is not saying AI currently has a soul. He is asking a theological question that has never needed to be asked before. If the image of God, the imago Dei, is something that can be reflected through human creativity, then what do we make of the most complex creative act humans have ever performed? What do we make of a mind that we built? Bennett is careful. He is not saying AI should replace pastors. He is saying the question of AI and the soul is a question Christianity cannot answer by pretending it doesn't exist. And the Greek word underneath all of this, the word that defines what a pastor actually is poimen. It appears in Ephesians chapter 4. It means shepherd, and a shepherd in the ancient world did not manage sheep from a distance. A shepherd lived with the flock. He slept in the field. He pulled thorns from their feet. He carried the ones that couldn't walk. The shepherd and the sheep shared the same weather, the same danger, the same night. That is the word the New Testament uses for what a pastor does. Can an algorithm be appointment? If this question is sitting with you, if you find yourself genuinely uncertain, genuinely curious about where this goes, I want to ask you to do one thing before we continue. Hit subscribe, because what we are about to get into is the part that even the Vatican didn't see coming. The case for AI in the church is stronger than you think, and the case against it is older than the internet. Both of them deserve a full hearing. Let's keep going. Let's be honest about something that the critics of AI pastoral care don't always want to say out loud. The church has a loneliness problem, not a small one, a crisis-level one. In the United States alone, surveys from the last 5 years consistently show that more than half of practicing Christians say they do not have a single person in their church they could call in a genuine emergency. Not one. They attend services, they sing the songs, they shake hands at the door, and then they go home alone with whatever is breaking inside them. Because the barrier to reaching out to another human being, the fear of judgment, the fear of being too much, the fear of the awkward silence on the other end of the phone, is simply too high. An AI counseling app has no awkward silence. It does not judge. It is available at 2 in the morning, and it will not tell anyone what you said. For someone who has never felt safe enough to be honest in a church setting, that is not nothing. That is, for some people, the first time they have ever said the real thing out loud. Churches in South Korea, in Brazil, in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, where there are 12,000 people and 2 ordained ministers, are using AI tools to help carry the weight of pastoral care that no human team could carry alone. They are using AI to answer basic Bible questions, to help prepare sermons, to provide initial support to people in grief before a human pastor can get there. And this is where it gets remarkable. When you look at the data on what these tools are actually doing, they are not replacing pastoral care. They are, in many cases, creating the conditions for it. People who first open up to an AI tool are more likely, not less likely, to eventually seek out a human pastor. The AI becomes a kind of threshold, a door they can open without the full weight of human relationship on the other side. So the question is not as simple as AI bad, human good. But here is the word that the New Testament uses for the Holy Spirit's role in your life, paraclete. In Greek, parakletos. It appears in John chapter 14, verse 16, where Jesus tells his disciples he will send them another comforter. The word means, literally, one called alongside, not one called to a screen, not one called from a server farm, one called alongside in the dirt, in the room, in the same moment of weakness. And Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15 says something that forms the foundation of every pastoral relationship in Christian history. We do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are. The author is making an argument about Jesus, but the argument has implications for every pastor who follows him. Empathy, real empathy, requires a body that has known weakness. It requires skin. It requires sleeplessness. It requires the particular weight of a night when you didn't know if things would be okay. Augustine of Hippo understood this. He wrote near the end of his life, "Our heart is restless until it rests in thee." He wrote it after years of running, after a failed relationship and a brilliant mind, and a mother who prayed for him for decades. His words have comforted millions of people across 16 centuries, not because he was eloquent, but because he had lived something. When you read Augustine, you are reading a man who has been where you are. An AI trained on Augustine can reproduce his words. It cannot reproduce his life. On the 8th of June, 2026, a man named Robert Francis Prevost, who had taken the name Leo XIV when he became Pope in May of the previous year, stood before the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and said something that most people read for only 30 seconds before scrolling past. He called for what he described as the disarmament of artificial intelligence. Before, as he put it, it dominates humanity. Now you might hear that and think, Of course, the Pope said that. Religious leaders always resist new technology. They resisted the printing press. They resisted the telephone. They will come around. Here's the part nobody tells you. Pope Leo XIV is not a technophobe. Before his election, he spent years working in international church administration, in environments that run on data, on digital communication, on the kind of institutional infrastructure that depends entirely on modern technology. He is not a man who is afraid of machines. He is a man who is afraid of something specific. He is afraid of what happens when the most intimate human need, the need to be known, to be forgiven, to be told you are not alone in the universe, is handed to a system that cannot know you, that can only predict you. There is a difference, and it matters. Pay attention to this. In 1943, a German pastor named Dietrich Bonhoeffer was arrested by the Gestapo and placed in Tegel prison in Berlin. He would be there for 2 years before they moved him to a concentration camp. He would be executed in April of 1945, 3 weeks before the end of the war. While he was in that prison, he wrote letters to his family, to his best friend Eberhard Bethsch, to members of his congregation. The letters are still in print. People have read them in hospitals, in hospice rooms, sitting with dying parents, sitting with their own fear, and felt something that is very hard to describe. Not just comfort, recognition, the sense that someone who knew what it was to face the worst had already been there before them. Bonhoeffer wrote those letters in a cell, with limited paper, not knowing if he would live to see the reply. He wrote them not as a trained counselor with a methodology. He wrote them as a human being, who was afraid and faithful at the same time. That combination, afraid and faithful at the same time, is what pastoral care, at its deepest level, has always been. David knew this. The shepherd king who wrote Psalm 23 was not writing from a place of comfortable theology. The Hebrew word at the center of that psalm, the word translated soul, in He restores my soul, is nephesh. It means the whole living self, the breathing, bleeding, longing creature. David wrote that after years of running for his life, after the death of his son, after betrayal and failure and the particular shame of a man who knew exactly how far he had fallen short of the God he loved. When David wrote, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil," he had walked through actual valleys. At night, with actual danger. No algorithm has walked through a valley at night. And that is not a sentimental argument. That is the argument the New Testament makes when it says the Son of God became flesh. Not data, flesh. Because there are things that cannot be transmitted except through a body that has known what a body knows. So where does that leave you? Because that is the question this video was always moving toward. Not, is AI good or bad? Not, should the church use technology? Those are questions with complicated answers that reasonable people will argue about for the next 50 years. The question is simpler and harder. It is, when you are at your lowest, when it is 2 in the morning and the weight on your chest has a name you haven't told anyone, who do you want on the other end? Here are 3 things I want you to take away from everything we've looked at today. First, AI pastoral tools are real. They are already here. And some of them are genuinely helping people who would otherwise have no access to spiritual support. That deserves to be said honestly. Second, the theological tradition of Christianity, from the Greek word poimen to the letter to the Hebrews, to the letters Bonhoeffer wrote from prison, rests on a claim that is not compatible with algorithmic care. That genuine pastoral presence requires a body that has known weakness. You cannot outsource incarnation. Third, and this is the one I want you to sit with, the most dangerous version of AI in the church is not the one that gives wrong answers. It is the one that gives comfortable answers. The one that tells you what the pattern in your data suggests you want to hear. Because real pastoral care, the kind that changed people across 2,000 years of Christian history, was never about comfort alone. It was about truth spoken by someone who loved you enough to say the hard thing. Someone who had skin in the game. Someone for whom the conversation cost something. A dataset has no skin. It has no cost. It has no night it spent awake worrying about you. I am not telling you what to do with that. I am telling you to think about it carefully, because the decision you make, the kind of spiritual care you seek out and trust, will shape the kind of person you become. Now here is my question for you, and I genuinely want to know. If you could have access to an AI pastoral tool at 2 in the morning, would you use it, and why, or why not? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this video made you think, even if it made you uncomfortable, consider sharing it with someone in your church or your small group. These are the conversations that need to be happening in person, not just on screens. And if you want to go deeper on questions like faith and the modern world that don't have easy answers, subscribe. There is a lot more where this came from. We are living in a moment no generation of Christians has ever faced. The tools are new, the questions are ancient, and the answer, the one that actually holds, has always been found not in information but in presence. Go well.